Hi, everybody. This is Simon. Welcome to the second episode of Story Forward. I have with me Ben Clutter, who is the Director of Strategic Relationships at It's Time, Texas. Today, we're going to talk about a field that the two of us are passionate about, health and wellness. Let me just give a moment for Ben to introduce himself.
Thanks. Hey, yeah, I'm Ben Clutter. As he mentioned, I work for an organization called It's Time Texas, and we are focused on improving the health landscape of the state of Texas, which is a very big and bold mission in itself. And I help previously work on some of our corporate wellness efforts, and now I focus more on strategic relationships on, how can we do a lot of cross-sector collaboration to build a culture of health in Texas.
Cool. Thanks for joining, Ben. So let's get straight into it. I'd love to learn about a pivotal career moment that you've had where you've had to make a tough decision in regards to your career. And how did that play out?
Yeah, definitely. Pretty early on in my career, when I was about to get more into the bigger corporate and global wellness aspect, I was working sort of a smaller impact type job. I wasn't making a lot of money, honestly, like making very little money, just enough to get by. And I had the opportunity to go take another job for just a couple thousand more dollars a year. And very fortunately and very privileged, I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of people that I had been building relationships with. And they really worked to help convince me on looking at a long-term investment of, if you have the ability and the foundation of a lot of good relationships around you that can potentially build you up over time, stay focused on those and don't take the short-term gain of just a couple thousand of dollars just to switch to a job that you may not really like anyways. And that literally 100% affected where I am today. By the grace of working with those friends and family through that process, I was able to stick where I was, and that actually led me to my big first kind of foot in the door of a global wellness position with a big oil and gas firm out of Houston. And then that led me to where I am today with It's Time Texas. So it's funny to think about, 8 years ago, a lot of people kind of led me to the position of invest in long-term relationships and watch how it plays out. And 8 years later, I'm really capable to do what I really want to do today because of that.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Yes, I mean, I think we often underestimate the importance of thinking long term in terms of our career or our personal wellness goals, and oftentimes, although that's the journey it's harder to take, it offers some of the best results. So kudos to you for waiting that out and making those decisions for the long term. So for someone, I'm sure there are several people out there who are very passionate about health, wellness, fitness, but they don't necessarily have a background in science or health, myself included. And we often struggle to understand what type of roles exist out there that we could take on without a background in science and health. So can you throw some light on what you've seen in terms of opportunities in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. And I think it's unfortunately kind of a stigma that goes into public health and a lot of social impact around health and wellness efforts is you have to have a health background to do it, or a master's in public health, or some sort of doctorate around sociology and impact. And in reality, that's definitely not the case. Like the organization I work for now, maybe 50% of our staff has their master's in public health. And the other 50% of us do not come from a health background. We have people who excel in business, people who came from previous tech startups, people like myself who were in the corporate wellness side but have shifted more into relationship management and business development. There's a lot of opportunity to really get involved no matter what your field is. If you have a passion, you can bring value to something that organization or company really needs help with. One of the things that we sort of see and are hoping to get a little bit more of in the future, especially in the public health field, is access to people who are really good at analyzing data and telling stories around data. That's one thing that we can really see a lot of cross-sector collaboration on, especially from big tech and other firms that are really focused on data. is we have access to so much data from like the public health side and just the social impact side and social justice side, but like, how do we analyze all of that? What tools should we be using to analyze it? And how do we tell the stories that really get people to move with the data that we have? So there's a ton that people can do from all sorts of different fields.
Nice. No, thanks for sharing. So especially during these times where we've seen there are several industries impacted due to COVID. On the other hand, you also notice industries like public health and health services that there actually need people with these specific skills to contribute and make an impact. So, from that standpoint, I'd love to learn more about, what type of data do you think is underutilized today in the public health field, and that would actually help generate a lot of insight so we can take some action?
That's a very good question. I think I could take it a lot of directions. So excuse me if I go on some tangents here. It's not really that there's a lack of data, but there's so much overabundance of data. How are we utilizing that data to like actually tell stories that move policy change and things like that? Again, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have access to a lot of data, but analyzing it and storytelling with it is something that, our industry really is trying to work on. And there's some really good groups doing really great work around that type of stuff. From another perspective, one thing that like I am personally interested in, and I know that you and I have talked a lot about, is I'm really interested in seeing more data come around self-care. And if you take time for yourself in your personal health and wellness, how it positively affects the people, the organizations, and the communities around you. That's sort of emerging trends on this concept of like, if you take care of yourself and your health first, it does have a huge positive impact for your family, your team at work, your organization, work, the big community in which you live and serve. We also definitely see that around nursing and educators. These are groups of people that give 110% of their energy to either the children they work with or the patients that they serve from the nursing standpoint. And there's a lot of movement around like, how do we help educate the concept of self-care will allow you to have better impact and better long-term downstream effects with your patients and the children and the people around you. So that's the type of things that we sort of think about. Like, we would love to see more on that type of side.
Well, that's great. You touched upon self-care, and I think that's one of those topics which, at least personally for me, I've had to struggle with that a little bit, just because my approach to that was I generally deprioritized self-care till it got to a point where I realized that it was not helping me, my friends, or my family because I was not prioritizing self-care. So then that's when kind of I had that light bulb moment, which where I tried to flip it around and actually prioritize self-care, which in turn had a positive effect on not only my professional life, but also my personal life. It's a very interesting concept. I'm glad you touched upon it. And I do hope people watching this video learn that self-care is also about how you can make yourself lead a wholesome life so you can impact your friends and family with it. So let me pause there for a bit. So the last question that I wanted to talk about, there are several people who want to help, but they don't necessarily want to make this a full-time career, but they're passionate enough to want to impact their communities. Do you have any ideas or thoughts for folks who are wanting to impact communities from a health and wellness standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I think there's a lot that can be done. A lot of it starts with, if you're really interested in supporting, your family or your organization or your community from a health aspect. One thing that we definitely learned, and I have personally definitely learned, is start from a listening and curiosity standpoint. Being very curious and very sensitive in the questions that you ask, like, how can I identify a need for my community? And once the need is identified with those diverse voices in the community, how can we help make impact? And a lot of that can be done through various ways. A lot of, at least in Texas, all school districts have something called the School Health Advisory Council that is basically set up for like, how do we help set our students, teachers, and community up for health success? So schools are one way to really get involved, and that's a really interesting one because with that you have the ability to, you know, impact the health of kids, teachers, parents, grandparents. Also, just kind of deeper community health issues. There's a big need for community ambassadors. There's a lot of really good nonprofit, social impact, and for-profit work going on in the health space. You know, how do you get resources out to the communities that are really interested in health, and how do you help build education around, you know, communities and health? So there's a lot you can do, but for me personally, I found that it all starts with asking questions and listening and trying to figure out what is a priority for health for people and communities, and then how can you go take action knowing what they have told you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing again. I think it's definitely important to think of the community, and it starts with yourself and your family, and then extend it out to the teachers. So I'm very happy to know that's the kind of effort that your team has been doing in this space. So that's great. I know nutrition is a vast topic, but I just wanted to leave us with a few thoughts that you can share around nutrition and generally your perspective on how does nutrition help with overall health and wellness.
Yeah, it's a very, could go a lot of directions on this one, like we've talked about. You know, one thing that we've mentioned before is we really try to focus on progress, not perfection, when it comes to food and health. And, you know, saying that and recognizing some systems and people are more privileged to have access to good food. So progress, not perfection, is a big event on like what is available to you and how can you take little tiny steps to help improve your health and nutrition from that side. So progress, not perfection, is a big one. And then for me personally, one of the things I've tried to work on over the past 3 to 4 years is more of a focus on what foods will help my longevity in life. You know, what will help me live a longer, fulfilling life where I can be physically active. And a lot of the science, anybody who's interested, go check out Blue Zones. They sort of look at a lot of the communities around the world that live the longest and live active the longest, and they have a lot of resources around fruits and vegetables, minimal meat income, focus on omega-3s, fatty acids, and things like that. So that's my personal journey that I've been sort of undertaking the past 3 to 4 years, is a focus on longevity. Great.
Thanks for sharing. There's some cool resources that you've shared with me that I'm hoping to look up and learn more about. Thanks again for taking the time with me to talk about this topic that we both are so passionate about. And I hope this benefits others who are also looking to make an impact in this field. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for thinking of me.
Thank you.